The gentleman from Florida.
I yield 3 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from Texas, Mr. Paul, at this time.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the comments of the gentleman from California earlier that said that those of us who oppose this amendment should not be challenged on our patriotism. That certainly should be true. But I do rise in support of the rule because obviously it is constitutional to amend the Constitution. That we can't object to. But I do have questions about what we're doing to the spirit of America, the spirit of the Constitution, in a desire to protect a symbol. Not too long ago, Hong Kong was taken over by Red China. The very first law that Red China passed on Hong Kong was to make it illegal to burn a flag. The first time Hong Kong ever had that law, the British don't have a law like this. Red China, as soon as they took over Hong Kong, they passed a law to make it illegal to burn a flag. But it doesn't stop there. On an annual basis, we, the Congress, require the State Department to report to us any human rights violations around the world. The human rights violations in Red China are used specifically to decide whether or not they will get most favored nation status. Last year, in 1988, the report came to the Congress in April of this year, and it reported that indeed there were violations of human rights. What were the human rights violations that we are condemning by this report and we're going to use against the Red Chinese? 2 individuals burned the Hong Kong or the Red Chinese flag. I think it's just a little bit hypocritical if we want to claim the Red Chinese are violating human rights because somebody there burned a flag. At the same time, we intend to pass that law here. The spirit of the Constitution did not require this. We have had 212 years of our history since the Constitution was passed. We have not had this passed. We have not required this. Where is the epidemic? I cannot remember ever seeing, of course I'm sure it has been, on television where an American citizen burned the flag. It must happen. It will happen again. Matter of fact, it will probably happen more often because there will be more attention given to it once this law is passed. Where I see the burning of the American flag, where I get outraged, is when the foreigners are doing it because they are so defiant about our policies around the world. But that's a lot different. We're not dealing with that hatred toward America that we're dealing with here. We're dealing with a few deranged individuals that we're willing to challenge the spirit of the Constitution. They say this is not free speech, but it is indeed expression. Just as religion is, just as the study of philosophy is, just as our personal convictions. To say that this is not protected under the Constitution, the current Constitution, I think is quite wrong. I think we do protect that. And yes, you would say this is egregious. This is horrible to burn this flag. But that's the purpose of the First Amendment, to protect obnoxious and uncomfortable speech.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
The gentleman from North Carolina.
Madam Speaker, I yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Paul.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 4 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding and I ask unanimous consent to revise.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I rise in opposition to this amendment. I have myself served 5 years in the military, and I have great respect for the symbol of our freedom. I salute the flag and I pledge to the flag. But I served my country to protect our freedoms and to protect our Constitution. I believe very sincerely that today we are undermining to some degree that freedom that we have had all these many years. We have not had a law against flag desecration in the 212 years of our constitutional history. So I don't see where it's necessary. We have some misfits that on occasion burn the flag, which we all despise. But to now change the ability for some people to express themselves and to challenge the First Amendment, I think we shouldn't do this carelessly. Let me just emphasize how the First Amendment is written. Congress shall write no law. That was the spirit of our nation at that time. Congress shall write no laws. Now, we've written a lot of laws since then. But every time we write a law, to enforce a law, we imply that somebody has to arrive with a gun. Because if you desecrate the flag, you have to punish that person. So how do you do that? You send an agent of the government to arrest him, and it is done with a gun. So this is, in many ways, patriotism with a gun. So if you are not a patriot, and if you are assumed not to be a patriot and you're doing this, we will send somebody to arrest them. It is assumed that many in the military have fought, but I think the gentleman from North Carolina pointed out aptly that some who have been great heroes in war can be on either side of this, on either side of this issue. But I would like to read a quote from a past national commander of the American Legion, Keith Cruel. He said, "Our nation was not founded on devotion to symbolic idols, but on principles, belief in ideals expressed in the Constitution and its Bill of Rights. American veterans who have protected our banner in battle have not done so to protect a golden calf. Instead, they carried the banner forward with reverence for what it represents, our beliefs and freedom for all. Therein lies the beauty of our flag. A patriot cannot be created by legislation." And I think that's what we're trying to do out of our frustration and exasperation and our feeling of helplessness. When we see this happen, we feel like we must do something. But I think most of the time when we see flag burning on television, it's not by American citizens. It is done too often by foreigners who have strong objection to what we do overseas. That's when I see it on television, and that's when I get rather annoyed. I want to emphasize once again that the very first, or one of the very first laws that Red China passed on Hong Kong was to make flag burning illegal. The very first law in Red China on Hong Kong was to make sure they had a law in the books like this. Since that time, they have prosecuted some individuals. And our State Department tallies this, keeps records of this as a human rights violation. That if they burn the flag, they are violating human rights. Our State Department reports it to our Congress, as they did April of this year, and those violations are used against Red China in the argument that they should not gain most favored nation status. So there's just a bit of hypocrisy here if we think that this law will do so much good, and yet we are so critical of it when Red China does it. We must be interested in the spirit of our Constitution. We must be interested in the principles of liberty. We should not be careless in accepting this approach to enforce a sense of patriotism.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Virginia.
Speaker, I yield 15 seconds to the gentleman from California.
And I would address my colleague that just spoke in the well. Is it not true that the gentleman votes no on over 90% of the issues and finds reason not to vote for issues on this House floor? Is that true?
Well, if the gentleman would yield, I think that is correct, because probably 90% of the time this Congress is doing things that are not constitutional, and I think they're very legitimate.
Thank you.